Good morning. It is Friday, March the 11th, and this is The Drill. Welcome to all the butchers, bakers, and candlestick makers out there. I'm Ron, your host and the only true conservative in the United States today. So today, after the Daily Declaration for Spiritual Warfare, the Pledge of Allegiance, and the Star-Spangled Banner, we will have the No Free Lunch, Government Union Difference, and Democracy. All that and more when I come back. Thank you. And now the Daily Declaration for Spiritual Warfare for March 11th. Greater am I in you than he that is in the world. I am the vine, you are the branches. If you remain in me and I in you, you will bear much fruit. Apart from me, you can do nothing. If you remain in me and my words remain in you, ask whatever you wish, and it will be done for you. You are no longer controlled by your sinful nature, but by my Spirit who lives in you. I have raised you up that I might display my power in you, and that my name might be proclaimed in all the earth. Keep my words, and store up my commands within you. Guard my teachings as the apple of your eye. Bind them on your fingers, write them on the tablet of your heart. Because my power is at work within you, you will be able to do immeasurably more than all you ask or imagine. John chapter 15, verses 5 through 7, Romans chapter 8, verses 9, chapter 9, verses 17, and 1 John chapter 4, verses 4 through 6. Prayer declaration. Greater is he that is in me than he that is in the world. God's Spirit dwells in me and has given me life. I am able to do immeasurably more than all I could ask or imagine, according to his power that is at work within me. God will continue to fill me with the knowledge of his will through all the wisdom and understanding that the Spirit gives, so that I may live a life worthy of the Lord and please him in every way. Amen. And that was the Daily Declaration for Spiritual Warfare for March the 11th. Thank you. Who is the true conservative? He is religious and realistic. He is the person that understands that culture is the foundation for politics. He acknowledges a benevolent universe. He is patriotic and uses common sense. He makes judgments, refuses to speculate, speaks clearly and definitively, and is not afraid to say no. He's open-minded, asking why rather than why not. He is consistent, credible, and influential, not ashamed of his existence, unafraid to learn or correct his mistakes. He is a normal American. Thank you. What are the true conservative tactics in support of the true conservative strategy to defeat the socialists? Number 1, don't be intimidated. Number 2, don't prove a negative. Number 3, don't be neutral. And number 4, don't take their word for it. Thank you. So what is the true conservative strategy for defeating the socialists politically in this country? It is to attack the socialists from the bottom up, to demoralize and defeat the rank and file socialist that we encounter each and every day. And by so doing, we will discourage them from returning people like Nancy Pelosi to office. Thank you. What are the true conservatives' political priorities? Number 1, the abolition of abortion throughout the country. Number 2, making nuclear, biological, and chemical weapons obsolete. Number 3, the decertification of public employee unions throughout the country. And number 4, assigning criminal and civil liability to all regulators across the country. Thank you. And now there's no free lunch. At the heart of capitalism is the unification of knowledge and power. Because knowledge is dispersed, power must be as well. George Gilder. Here, Gilder simply applies the brilliance of Hayek's knowledge problem in the most succinct way possible. Trying to centralize knowledge, as the collectivist does, creates horrifically suboptimal economic outcomes. Trying to centralize power, though, creates destruction. And that was, there's no free lunch. Thank you. And now, Government Against Itself by Mr. DeSalvo, Chapter 2, The Government-Union Difference. Public sector labor relations are complex matters. They involve not just salaries, wages, and benefits of employees, but also management's prerogatives and the things that public agencies are tasked to perform. Government is a unique employer, not easily comparable to organizations in the business world. In government, it is harder to measure efficiency and productivity for agencies and workers because they often lack clearly defined goals and missions, to say nothing of the objective measurement of success used in the private sector, namely profit. When employee unionization is added into the mix, more complications arise. How unions are defined and measured, and how to define and measure their effects on workers' wages and benefits, government productivity, and political activity present formidable challenges for social scientists. The studies are multiple and sometimes contradictory. Getting a clear picture is hard. To help organize such disparate material into a coherent tableau, I present 4 themes in this chapter to provide a framework for thinking about the role of public sector unions in American democracy. These themes are then braided into the chapters that follow. Taken together and buttressed by the existing evidence, they reveal significant tensions between the public interest and the interests of public sector unions. Back in a minute. Thank you. Democracy. The first theme is democracy. The oldest critique of public sector unionism is that it compromises the sovereignty of democratic government and distorts the democratic process. When most people think about how democracy is supposed to work, they imagine citizens voting in competitive elections for candidates offering distinct policy platforms. The winners then take office and set about implementing their agenda through the bureaucracy. To be sure, this is a stylized picture that overlooks many other distortions. Yet, unionizing government workers vastly complicates it. In collective bargaining negotiations with the government, the people's elected representatives partially cede control of the bureaucracy to unelected labor leaders. Many policy choices are then the outcome of negotiations between office holders and unions rather than the expression of the people's will channeled through their representatives. Huge information asymmetries help explain many outcomes. The rationally ignorant public pays little attention to public sector labor relations, while the unions are preoccupied with it. Law professor Richard Epstein has described collective bargaining in government as an unfair match between voters on one side and public officials and unions on the other, because politicians can escape voter wrath by granting public employees highly favorable but less visible pay and benefit packages. Furthermore, over the long term, negotiated work rules can even push public policy down paths that neither elected officials nor voters truly desire. There's also evidence that the unionized portions of government end up overstaffed, while other sectors are starved. Democrat accountability does little to restrain government union demands. Furthermore, insofar as public employee unions are unique interest groups, they can distort democratic elections and legislative processes. Government unions make campaign contributions and organize get-out-the-vote drives to elect politicians who then act as management in negotiations over pay, benefits, and work rules. The result is a cycle that is hard to break. It's called corruption, by the way. Back to the book. Politicians agree to generous contracts for public workers. Those workers then pay their union dues, a portion of which are funneled back into those same politicians' campaign war chests. Such an arrangement sets government on a glide path toward growth. Public sector unions also enjoy a number of advantages over traditional interest groups when it comes to political influence. First, they have easier access to policymakers through the collective bargaining process, while other interest groups must fight for such entree. Second, government unions can more easily mobilize their members for electoral participation than other interest groups can. Third, most interest groups must devote a great deal of time and effort to fundraising. Public sector unions, on the other hand, enjoy a steady, reliable revenue stream as union dues are deducted directly from members' paychecks, often by government, which drastically reduces the union's administrative costs. These agency fees, which are often the monetary equivalent to union dues, must be paid by all members in a bargaining unit, regardless of whether they join the union or not. Therefore, they act as strong incentives, if not outright coercion, for workers to join the union. These advantages usually allow them to defeat any reform coalition seeking to roll back any of their gains in collective bargaining rights, job security, or compensation. Few other interest groups possess such an arsenal of resources. Bringing them all to bear can reduce the quality of the democratic process. All of this means that when it comes to public sector labor unions, unions representing government workers, elected officials, and agency managers can combine to create a uniquely powerful iron triangle. Iron triangles are part of the important tradition of analyses of American politics. Interest groups representing farmers, gas and oil companies, banks, auto manufacturers, real estate firms, and so on, all seek to exercise influence with elected officials and the bureaucracies that regulate their industry. Debate and discussion inside iron triangles is often technical and confined to experienced insiders. And, as critics often point out, the interests and policy preferences of insiders often differ substantially from those of the general public. To the extent that powerful interest groups succeed in insulating policy decisions from citizen pressures, they are able to do so because they have the means and motive to tirelessly pursue their goals, while the attention of the general public is too episodic and underinformed to have much of an impact. While iron triangles that diminish democracy are to some extent inevitable given the structure of American political institutions, public sector unions can make them even stronger and more exclusive. Back in a minute. Thank you. Finally, to the extent that public employee unions have saddled state and local government with long-term liabilities in the form of pension and healthcare commitments, they restrict the range of democratic choice. Today, states and localities are budgeting more but deciding less, as large slices of the public fisc are already spoken for. In California, for example, the share of general fund revenues used to pay pensions and public employee health care has doubled in the last decade, crowding out other spending priorities the public and politicians might entertain. The problem is especially grave because the number of retiring government employees is growing faster than the number of retirees in general. So while budgets grow in size, what government can do with those funds is more limited. This is a recipe for voter skepticism and distrust. And that was the Chapter 2, the difference of government employee unions, from the book Government Against Itself. Thank you. Who is the socialist? He is the man that is spiritual. He's the man that seeks consensus. He's subjective, petty, and small, taking everything in life personally. He's outrageous, boring, and rude. He pretends to be a leader and a change agent. He pretends that he's your friend. He is sly, cunning, and deceptive. He dresses, acts, and speaks like a slob. He is informal and terminally unique. He is childish and pretends that he knows nothing. He has no conscience and pretends that might makes right and that the ends justify the means. He is impulsive and rationalizes his behavior. He is deterministic, blaming others for his mistakes. He is skeptical, demanding that others solve his problems. His unreasonableness and irresponsibility make him a bad role model, bad father, brother, family member, friend, and a bad person, period. So if you think that you can be friends with a socialist, think again. Thank you. This is Ron, your host, the only true conservative in the United States today, bidding adios to all the butchers, bakers, and candlestick makers out there, and reminding you to tune in to the John and Ken Show, which is an excellent example of how true conservatives communicate. It's a radio show that's on KFI AM 640 from 2 o'clock in the afternoon to 6 o'clock in the evening, Monday through Friday. And that's Pacific time. So that's an excellent show to listen to. And other than that, until next time, remember to be honest, to be smart, to be beautiful, and to remember that the left has no authority, no power, and they can't win.